This episode of the Cost of Living Abroad podcast is brought to you by SafetyWing Nomad Insurance. Today we're asking, why are so many expats moving to Da Nang, Vietnam for a better life? Is it still worth it in 2025? And how hard is it really to open a bar or business here? Stick around to hear the real cost of starting fresh abroad, straight from two guys who actually did it, Will and Cyril, the owners of Patio Bar Da Nang.
This month, I just cruise around, visit the city, go to the beach, go to the mountains, enjoy life, and realized I would really love staying here.
How long did it take you from, the moment you landed in Da Nang and started looking for a location for this business to opening the door and pouring a drink?
6 months.
Especially in terms of the cost of living, this idea of the more you earn, the more you spend. So what about you? Why did you leave California?
And I came out here originally because I had a seasonal job for years in the US that afforded me a few months off every year. This is a beautiful place, especially during the cold winter time back in the States, or colder winter time. Eventually I decided it was time to make the move. I was tired of the rising costs and everything in California. There's plenty of social political reasons as well that, we're incentivizing to take off. Kind of been on my mind for a long time.
Why don't you explain some of the real, the pros or what it was that drew you into Vietnam as opposed to Costa Rica?
Too many Americans in Costa Rica.
I mean, over the world, it's gotten easier and easier over the years now that we have the Google Translate and everything. But that's so ingrained here. Or and it's better if you speak the language, of course, it's nice. But if you don't, unless you're in an administrative building dealing with some kind of bureaucratic thing, people are pretty easygoing, people speak English a fair amount, and everybody has their Google Translate ready on their phone.
All right, guys, what's up? Welcome to Cost of Living Abroad. I'm Evan.
What's up, man? Will.
Hey, Cyril.
So thanks so much. Thanks for having me at your new business, the Patio. I'm pretty pumped to be here.
Welcome.
So basically, we start usually just talking about the cost of living, the expenses people have in their new life abroad, why they left home, that type of thing. But I think with you guys, it makes sense to literally just let's start with the business. Either one of you can jump in and explain to me, but how did you start the business? How do you make money abroad? What is the Patio?
I was at the origin of this project. I've been in F&B for 20 years, and I traveled a little bit everywhere. I was in Saigon, and I used to run a bar called The Notorious. I decided to make a move to Da Nang, sold my business in Ho Chi Minh, and came over here, gave a call to Will, and I knew he was interested in starting something over here. And we decided to go for it. The move was a kind of scene. Moving from Ho Chi Minh, that is a big city, busy 24 hours 7. Coming to here was looking for a more relaxed kind of lifestyle, a bit more close to nature. And you got the sea, you got the mountains, the weather is beautiful. That's what motivated me in the first place. Opening a restaurant or a bar over here was just the natural thing to do for me. It's what I know how to. That's what I know to do.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I remember, you guys know too, obviously, I started my Vietnam journey in Saigon before I came here, and I originally met you, Pham Viet Cham, which is I don't know if it's a hipster area, but it's certainly one of the cooler going out areas. Yeah, absolutely. One of the sort of expat hotspots going out areas, and that's where your original bar, Notorious, was. I've also made that parallel move to Da Nang for some of the reasons you talked about, but I guess for so many people, the turnoff or maybe the drawback of coming to Da Nang is that it's very hard as an expat or a foreigner to find any kind of in-person work, right? The vast majority of expats here are like me, they're working online in some ways. The audience, the people watching would be really curious about your process of doing that, of opening a brick and mortar in-person business, the nuts and bolts stuff, all those challenges.
Before coming to Vietnam, I did my research on the internet. I was looking for a place where a foreigner could open a company. What I've got from the net was there were 2 places where you could do everything by yourself, Vietnam and Costa Rica. My choice was easily made. I lived in Asia before. I lived in Taiwan for 7 years, and I really enjoyed it. I came back here, a different country, Vietnam. In Vietnam, very easy for a foreigner to open a company.
So, I think of it as being very pro business, right? The sort of obstacles to entry in business here are very low. Which I think it's a misnomer. Most people think the opposite. I think Vietnam is very, maybe because of the sort of taboo or whatever of it being communist or run by the communist parties, but it's actually super pro business, right? Like people,
Entrepreneurial
yeah, it's entrepreneurial economy. It's a startup economy. It's a hustle culture. So why don't you explain some of the real like the pros or what it was that drew you into Vietnam as opposed to Costa Rica?
Too many Americans in Costa Rica.
That's
Well,
hilarious. And then he picks up an American business partner.
and to be frank, Costa Rica's. I haven't been to Costa Rica. I've spent a lot of time in Central America and Mexico, but it's more expensive than here too, cost of living wise.
For sure. And the growing costs are, I mean, it's getting exponentially more expensive daily, whereas here it's a much more gradual incline.
So, what was the process of setting up the business? How long did it take? What was the paperwork like? The bureaucracy, all that stuff.
If you get help, and that's how you should do, it's not that complicated. The process take a couple of months. Open a company over here. It's pretty straightforward, and if you got the right partner that will help you, that will lead you in the right direction, it's not really complicated.
So, do you have like a silent Vietnamese partner in the business, or did you just like use a sort of service?
You got companies that gonna help foreigners to set up their business here, and that's what I did. I don't have a local partner.
Beautiful.
It's a 100% foreign-owned company. But yeah, I couldn't do everything by myself. The administration here is pretty tense. There's a lot of paperwork to be done. Everything is in Vietnamese. When you go into administrative buildings, you need someone who can help you communicate with them. So yes, you need local help for all these different paperwork.
I use SafetyWing's Essential Plan every time I travel around Southeast Asia. You need a plan if something goes wrong while you're in Southeast Asia and living abroad. SafetyWing's Nomad Insurance covers you in over 180 countries. We're talking about hospital stays, travel delays, meds, evacuations, even repatriation to your home country. It's all there in the fine print, and it starts at just $56 every 4 weeks. Use the link below pinned in the comments or at the top of the description, or just click and capture this QR code over my shoulder. What about the startup costs? Like obviously what part of France are you from originally?
South of France. I'm from Antibes.
Okay, so you're from like down in the Mediterranean part. Beautiful. Well, that makes sense maybe that you've ended up here and not in Saigon.
Chasing the good weather.
Yeah. What about the startup costs relative to France? How much more affordable do you think it is or know it is to open a business in a place like Da Nang?
It's at least half the cost. At least the very least. Yeah.
Only half?
It's not very difficult to open a small thing over here. You don't need that much for building work, furniture, or rents. All these expenses are much lower than it would be in France.
There's also a longer grace period for a lot of them. I mean, getting the business license, food certificates, and all that doesn't have to be set up in the same preemptive way that you need to in a lot of the Western world, like where I'm from, California, where just the business license alone is going to take you months and months before you're allowed to open. Whereas out here, like you said, it's made for entrepreneurs, or at least really, really helpful and incentivizing towards entrepreneurs. So they'll let you open up and process all those things as you're opening, which helps a lot.
Why did you guys leave home? Like, what was the impetus or the sort of catalyst for you to leave the south of France and to come to somewhere like Vietnam to live?
I'm a traveler. I started traveling very early. I lived in 4 different countries so far. So when I was 19, I moved to Australia for a few years. After Australia, I moved to England. After England, I moved to Taiwan, and now I'm in Vietnam. The last 20 years, I spent them outside France. I like living in a foreign country. I like being a foreigner in a strange place. A very different approach to life. It's a very different way of living. We feel more free. Yeah, I say free like this. Back home, there's a lot of convention. People expect you to live your life a certain way, rather than in a foreign country, you like a free electrons. People don't really expect from you to live your life.
To live up to this cultural norm or that cultural norm.
Yeah, you don't need to live up to others' expectation. You're a foreigner, so it's normal that you're different, and people accept you like that.
Yeah, I think about especially in terms of the cost of living, the whole, like back home, the idea of keeping up with the Joneses. I don't know what the French equivalent is, but you certainly know that. This idea of like the more you earn, the more you spend. So what about you? Why did you leave California?
I mean, I also have always been really into traveling, less living in other countries, but more just, when I was in my 20s, I was doing backpacking and things like that. 30s as well, I suppose. And I came out here originally because I had a seasonal job for years in the US that afforded me a few months off every year. This is a beautiful place that I had some friends love to come visit, especially during the cold winter time back in the States, or colder winter time. Eventually I decided it was time to make the move.
So-
I was tired of the rising costs and everything in California. There's plenty of like social political reasons as well that, were incentivizing to take off. Kind of been on my mind for a long time.
And when did you first, not even permanently, but just when did you first come to Vietnam?
First came out here in like 2010, I believe.
It's almost 15 years ago.
Yeah.
How has it changed? Like, it's such a rapidly developing country. I feel like I've seen more change in my 6 years here than in some of the other countries I lived in for decades or for much longer. Like, what's it been like since you got here 15 years ago?
I mean, I remember the first stoplight in Saigon going, and now you go to Saigon and traffic lights everywhere, right? I mean, it's changed a lot, but in a really progressive way. I'd say like of all the countries I've been to in my life, there's been a fair amount, 30 or 40, and spend time in. There's been far more of like co-assimilative kind of change and growth here versus a lot of other places. It's not tourism-based economy, even though there's plenty of tourism. We don't run into the same things you run into even Costa Rica, let alone Thailand and places like that, where it's such a tourism-based economy that kind of steers how growth goes. Whereas in Vietnam, like it grew in a far more, Western influence, but organic, assimilated kind of a way. At least it feels like to me. Mm-hmm. And like the art scene, the food scene, the beer scene, like the craft beer scene. All those different things I've seen like really, really grow in a progressive way over the last 15 years. In a really attractive and like young, driven way.
Yeah, it has the vibrancy and definitely the energy of like youth in a way that like back home in the West feels old. Like, and I don't mind it, right? Like all of us are sort of above or over the median age in Vietnam. Whereas if we go home, even though all of us have a little bit of white hair, we're probably younger than the average American or Canadian or Frenchman. How long have you been in Vietnam?
8 years.
8 years. And so coming from, I don't know if you came direct or not, but I've spent a good amount of time in Taiwan, around Taipei too. Taipei is so much more advanced, so much more Western. Like the infrastructure is so built up, right? The first time I landed in Taipei, I'm like, oh, this is a fully realized city, right? Whereas Vietnam is, in a lot of ways, feels in transition. So what did you feel like were the benefits of coming to Vietnam?
I agree with what you just said. I remember in Taiwan, one of my friends came here for a week vacation. And when he came back, he said, oh, Vietnam is incredible. It's like Taiwan 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. I think they're heading in the right direction. But yes, Vietnam is 10 years before, so it's very dynamic. We can see things building and destroying, building again. You got new places opening every month, others closing. It's very dynamic, it's very quick, and people are gonna choose in one place to reopen in a different location. It's always in movement.
It makes me think of like the sort of like the speed or the velocity too. And I think this would be probably surprising to a lot of people watching. How long did it take you from, the moment you landed in Da Nang and started looking for a location for this business to like opening the door and pouring a drink?
6 months.
6 months.
And I took my time. Yeah. It could have been a lot faster.
We intentionally were nice and slow about it. And even then, that's quicker than it's going to happen in most of the Western.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in Toronto, in Canada, spend minimum a year dealing with red tape and, basic stuff before you even had like a building instructor come in and like examine your bathrooms or your wheelchair accessibility, etc. Can you walk me through like the timeline of like, I think there are people out there who are really curious about what would it be like to move to Vietnam and to do this, to open up a sort of dream business 100 meters from the beach.
I arrived in Da Nang and I didn't start looking for a location straight away. First of all, I wanted to discover the city, see if I liked it more. So let's say the first month, I just cruise around, visit the city, go to the beach, go to the mountains, enjoy life, and realized I would really love staying here. Looking for a place was quite quick because this, I don't believe you should be looking over and over and over again for the perfect spots. Yeah, you make it perfect. Yeah, you find a place with potential and then you transform it. It didn't take me a long time. I think I saw maybe 3 or 4 different places before deciding, okay,
Yeah, we
this
saw
is
4
the one I want.
spots.
You need to be quick as well. You don't really have a lot of time to think about it because you got other people around that are interested in the same place. So it's really, you feel it with your gut. And if it's right, it's right. Maybe after a couple of months, 2 months, 3 months, we found this place. We made an offer very quickly. Several people were on it. So we had to battle a little bit and insist and show that we were motivated. And then everything happened very quickly.
I mean, it's like you said about the culture. Everything's so fluid and dynamic, and it's kind of the way that business starting and even finding a place goes as well. It's like you said, like, you can't sleep on a place for a week and make a decision. Like, it'll be gone. You know, everything's too fluid, too quick, too dynamic here. So once we kind of made the decision to jump on it and officially do it, ball got rolling really quick.
So yeah, how long was it from like the moment did you have a Vietnamese real estate agent presumably you're working with?
Talked to some real estate agents, but most of the places, I mean, we went back and forth. I mean, this place we just kind of found outside of like the whole realm of people we've been talking to and been searching through, and it just kind of came up, out of nowhere, and we jumped on it.
Like on a Facebook page or like literally
Yeah.
on a Facebook,
Literally
yeah.
on a Facebook
So
page.
this is something I say to my audience a lot is until you get to Vietnam, it's like Facebook obviously has global saturation, but you will not realize how much you'll rely on it to like social groups, marketplace, rent, everything.
It is the
Facebook,
marketplace.
it is the marketplace of Vietnam.
Or even walking around. Walking around is actually one of the best way to find a place. Real estates are little agents are a bit complicated to work with because they're trying to sell their products. They're not really listening to what you want. The best is to do things by yourself. There are websites, and there's one called Shotot. People will put ads on the property they want to rent. That's a good way of finding a place because there's no middleman.
Yeah,
So
talk
you
direct
really
owner.
have the whole market under your eyes,
Yeah.
under a click, and it's easy to make a choice. Then you have a phone number, you give a call, you visit the place. So, or just walking around in Vietnam, places that need to be rented, you often got a sign on the wall, a phone number. Usually, one of the best way to find a place. That's how I found my spot in Ho Chi Minh when I opened a bar. It's just by walking down the street and see a place with the sign for rent.
Yeah. I mean, when we first moved here in An Bang, it was a real estate agent that helped us find what was really more of like a vacation or holiday property out there at the beach. But then when we found the house, we're now permanently in Da Nang. I just did that. I just drove snakes up and down the streets on my motorcycle, and I had more of an idea after a couple months of what I was looking for.
It's kind of that old school way, pre-Airbnb, that most of us travelers figured out how to live places or stay places across the world. Is you show up for a night or two at the hotel and then go knocking on doors and searching around town.
Yeah.
And most of that's not really available in the world anymore, especially even for housing.
Yeah.
And out here, it's still perhaps the best, or at least on par with the best way to go about things.
I'm going to pitch my own product here too. So I do like course teaching people how to, help them literally move, live abroad, like you guys have, like I have. In the guide I have on like where to find a place to stay, where to find a place to live, how to rent, how to buy. I also have that website, chotat.vn, linked. It's in there, and it truly is it can be a game changer, I think, because you do get to deal direct with landlords or with owners of properties and cut out agents.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, it fulfills the same purpose that Facebook does. It's not as broad across not all the foreigners are using it. So it's not quite, as universally known about in Vietnam as Facebook is, but it's also a little bit more thorough than Facebook.
Okay.
Like my apartment right now, I found via Facebook, but most of the places in the last few years that I've lived out, I found via Showtime, including my motorbikes, my homes, my everything.
Yeah.
It's a really good reason.
So once you signed the lease, once you had the place, it was yours. How long for the build out? How long to open the door? How do you find contractors? You know?
About 3 months. But even then, once again, like we took our time intentionally. We know that like we had a good setup. We know when the tourism was about to start up a little bit more. You know, we had a fairly relatively cheap cost getting into the whole thing. So we really wanted to make sure we did it right. Really had our plan worked out what it is we wanted to do before we opened the doors. So honestly, we probably could have opened the doors weeks earlier, but we just wanted to get it really right. So it took us about 3 months before we opened.
And did you guys do the build out? Did you do it with a contractor?
We didn't do a lot of building work in that sense. We didn't build walls,
Yeah.
demolish some part of the buildings, remodel the place. It was purely decoration. So that was quite easy for us. I change a bit the painting, we change a bit the furniture around.
Some new appliances.
We got lucky because very quickly when we arrived in Da Nang, we managed to meet people working in this industry, and they were really helpful. Electricians or furniture shop, second hands for kitchen equipment and all this. Yeah, we quickly got some address, some places to go to. So it wasn't really a problem. Then it's need to be looking for suppliers and things like that. It's the same through contact. We got hooked with all these people, so everything came quite natural. We didn't struggle in finding all these people. The community, the foreign community here was really supportive and helpful. So that was a really nice surprise when I got there.
Big thing out here, I think, for Westerners who are trying to start businesses, is there really is a very supportive community of other foreigners doing the same things. I mean, we've received just pretty much nothing but positive encouragement and like an actual help. Not just like offers for help, but like things that have really come through and been, you know, fortunate for us. It's like a good community out here of other people.
So how did you get in touch with that community? What are some of the ways they supported you?
I mean, in terms of getting in touch with, I don't know, it just kind of happened. Like you meet people that
Like out of bars, in person, on Facebook?
all of the above. I'm gonna say mostly through just being out, and then through word of mouth through other friends, like friends of friends and friends of them, etc., etc. And everything from, once again, like finding electricians and shops, friendly advice without being pushy in any way, like actual helpful advice on different ways to go about our build up and our whole concept. I mean, everything has been like really helpful. And then also coming by and supporting us as customers as well,
Nice.
you know?
So let's talk about that. How's it been since the doors open? How long have you been open?
We've been open for 3 weeks now,
Yeah.
and it's been doing pretty well. We're quite happy about the crowd we get here. We're happy as well about what we offer and how the place turned out. So no, it's been great. It's the beginning, so it's always a little bit up and down. Sometimes it's very exciting, sometimes it's a little scary, but no complaint. It's been great.
I have to semi-apologize to you guys because, you know, I got 2 little kids. I truly am never out at night anymore. So I've only ever been here, you know, when you're opening up in the afternoon and it's super relaxed and chill. What's the vibe like at night? What is the offer? What kind of food and drink you guys offering? What kind of crowds coming in?
Well, the idea when opening this place was to make it an eatery, a drinking and eating kind of place. Not too formal, quite relaxed and laid back. So the concept of a tapas bar became very clear very quickly. We're making small plates, easy to eat. A lot of the dish we do, you can just eat them with your hands. And you can just nibble and share it with other people. We do a lot of small plates. So the idea is to pick a few of these and share with friends.
Okay.
Have a glass of wine, have a beer. We have people here as well coming for just having a drink. We have a nice signature cocktail list. You can see it's comfortable, not too formal, kind of thing.
Yeah, when it's right off the Antung tourist walking streets, it's I don't know, maybe 5 minutes to the beach at the most on foot. So it truly is in the heart of the sort of expat district or the expat, I guess, yeah, walking street. There's no other way to call it. So what are some of your favorites? What's your favorite menu items or your cocktail that you're making?
Particular towards the chorizo croquettes, just because I don't have many opportunities for chorizo out here. And as a California boy, I miss that a lot.
Okay.
Beyond that, obviously the steak, because it's a great steak. He does a great chimichurri sauce on it, and it's good beef. I mean, all the plates are great. As far as the cocktails, I'm a big fan of all of them. I think that our Endless Summer, which is like the passion fruit kind of a take on a whiskey sour almost,
Oof.
probably my personal favorite.
Yeah.
But there's a few of them that sell really well and repeat, like the hibiscus elderflower.
Well, for me, I got a different view on it because I designed the food menu. And, everything is pretty close to my heart. It comes from my childhood. It's very Mediterranean. This is where I grew up. There's a lot of things, a lot of recipe I picked up from the Nice food. So Nice is a big city next to mine. I come from Monty. In Nice is Provençal food from Provence. So I'd say I really like the soca. Soca is a chickpea kind of galette, and it's something I used to eat when I was going to the markets on a Sunday. So I like as well in the south of France we do a zucchini flower beignet. We can't find zucchini flowers over here, but they have pumpkin flowers, which is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
So I've been doing this dish over here that is a reminiscence of my childhood. What else? I don't know, pain perdu, the desserts, and just like French toast.
That might be my favorite.
And it's something I used to do when I was a kid. I spent afternoon making pain perdu and stuffing myself.
Is that lost bread? Is that what that means in English? Lost bread?
Lost bread,
Yeah,
yes.
translates
It's,
it.
the stale bread you've got in the kitchen that you're gonna dip in milk and eggs and then fry on a pan. Add a lot of sugar. And the way we do it here, we flambe it with rum and we cook it with pineapple.
Oh, beautiful.
So yeah, no, it's delicious. It's comfort food. It's sweet and warm and delicious.
Beautiful. Yeah, so not just a place for a drink, definitely a place to sit, enjoy the meals.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's shift now into sort of more focused questions about Vietnam. These are really about your perceptions of Vietnam, your experience of Vietnam. So we've talked a little bit about how the expat community and the other entrepreneurs and business owners have really helped you out. How do you feel as a foreigner you've been sort of treated by locals or by the Viets? Obviously, you have a different kind of contact or relationship with the Viet community as a business owner as opposed to just a tourist. So what's that like?
Vietnamese are really welcoming people. If you go there with the right attitude, they give it back to you. They've been really helpful too. We quickly got to meet locals in this area, old timer, people been born in this street and lived their whole life over here. These people are very nice, very friendly. If they can help, they would, and they're here for you. It's all about giving and receiving. If you're ready to be open to them.
I mean, Vietnam's interesting with, you definitely still feel, oh, look how pretty. You definitely still feel like you're a foreigner out here. You recognize that still there's a separation in culture. Maybe because the economy here isn't based as much off tourism as a lot of places that Westerners and expats tend to like to set up shop. It feels like there's far less of a split between those two cultures as there are in like a Thailand or a Costa Rica or in India, where you don't really feel as fully separated and that, it's just foreigners living across the street from Vietnamese. Like there is a lot more co-assimilation and cultural living here than I find in a lot of other nations.
Obviously in Saigon, I really felt like that. I've been a bit surprised by Da Nang, which this is sort of Mian or Antong, and then I live up a couple kilometers from here up the beach in Son Chau, which are both beachside. In other words, this is the tourist driven or tourist part of the city. But even within the tourist part of the city, like you said, I mean, I have neighbors who this is their generational homes, generational communities, and it's odd that it does really feel intermingled or blended, right? Like even though this is the tourist side, there's parts of it that just feel so local to me, right? Like,
Yeah, actually, that really, I found that interesting when I moved to Da Nang because I've loved Saigon for years. I lived down there, and that was part of the reason I love Saigon so much. Like, it feels like such a more integrated society in terms of all the different influences, including all the local ones. And honestly, I was worried that Da Nang wasn't going to have that. And I've traveled a little bit just vacationing here in the past, and I can see the larger tourism industry comparative to, say, Saigon. Like there's more, especially in this local area, there's more of an emphasis on the tourism and on tourists coming by. And that really worried me that it was going to be more of that separation quite a bit. Since I've been here, honestly, it's been like a fantastic surprise as to like how much, once again, like more integrated seeming all of that really is. And I still don't have that same feeling of like being a tourist outsider that I was worried that maybe I'd have more in Da Nang and that I've had in other places in the world. May not have that full metropolitan integration that a Saigon has, but it's close, honestly, and far closer than I thought.
I think that a little bit, and I'm just going to talk to my experience of it. We're spending our first few months in Hoi An. I really felt that in Hoi An in a way I'd never felt in Vietnam. Such a 100%. It's not just a tourist economy. It's like a tourist stop. It's like
It's a UNESCO site.
It's a UNESCO site. It's a pit stop on the way. And I felt my wife didn't. My wife who's Viet, had a wonderful experience. I loved the locals. Thought they were so friendly, so kind. I really felt that classic like, oh God, I couldn't live here because it'd be Groundhog Day and I'd be treated like a tourist, like I just showed up today every single day of my life. Whereas I haven't felt that in Da Nang. And maybe it's just there's a million people in the city. So there really is so few.
Like you, I asked myself which of the two cities I would pick, and I came exactly to the same conclusion that I love Hoi An. I think it's beautiful.
Yes.
It's a great little town. It's only a tourist hotspot. And Da Nang is a real city where people live and people work, and so you've got different sector of activity. It's not just a beautiful postcard here.
Yeah. You have a progressive, growing music scene, art scene, youth culture, all those different things here. Kind of like Saigon, especially like Saigon a few years ago, as it was just really blowing up. And nothing against Hoi An whatsoever, but it's lacking that in a sense just because there's so much more of an emphasis just on bringing in the tourists, really building up a place for them in that sense, like business-wise.
And look, that's not just an east-west divide, right? There's like towns in cottage country. There's towns in California. There's towns in France where it's like, that's the economy, right? For 4 months of the year, a zillion, people from out of town, from out of the state, from out of country show up, flood the place, flood the economy. They're there just to be served, to whatever, eat their French fries, their burger, or drink wine in wine country in France and then get out of there. So I still love Hoi An. But yeah, just to live, maybe to open a business, I don't think it was for me. What about the language barrier? Do either of you guys speak Viet? How's your immersion gone?
You'd see, I'm a bit ashamed to say I'm not speaking Vietnamese. I know a few words, but that's about it.
Numbers and food.
We speak English. We're lucky to have English as an international language, and people here, most people can speak English. So it's not really a big issue for everyday things. When it gets a little more pointy, yes, it can become a problem. When you go to administrative building, for example,
Yes.
then it becomes a problem. But in your everyday life, it's not really an issue. Of course, to learn Vietnamese, I think if you speak the language, your experience is going to be very different, a lot deeper. You're really going to participate and enjoy all aspects of this country. You'll have a different vision. You won't be the foreigner, the lambda foreigner, but you'll be someone that is interested in the culture and in the people. So it's a big plus. I've lived in Taiwan before. It took me a while, but at one point I've learned Chinese, and I really saw a big difference in the attitude of people when you manage to communicate with them in their own language. You gain a credibility, you gain in attractiveness, you become more interesting as well.
But in terms of difficulty, it's not a lot of difficulty.
You mean, there's not a lot of difficulty in surviving without Viet.
Absolutely. I mean, it's, for one, it helps that it's the Roman alphabet out in
Yeah, 100%.
so even just recognizing things that you have learned becomes a lot easier as time goes on. And then it's also, I mean, over the world, it's gotten easier and easier over the years now that we have like the Google Translate and everything. But that's so ingrained here. Or even if, and it's better if you speak the language, of course, it's nice. But if you don't, unless you're in an administrative building dealing with some kind of bureaucratic thing, people are pretty easygoing. People speak English a fair amount, and everybody has their Google Translate ready on their phone for any kind of simple communication. And even then, it rarely comes up.
And I mean, that's what I think too, when I like talk to the specific problems, concerns about my audience, the worries they have of living abroad, in Southeast Asia in general, in Vietnam. Those are the big things. Don't screw around with, get help with, right? Like when you have to go do the paperwork, you have to go to bureaucracy for your visas, for your opening a business, for sometimes for healthcare or insurance type of things, right? That's what you just, in that part, get help, get a translator, have a,
In those situations, it's kind of huge and a huge boon. But I mean, honestly, I haven't spent a ton of time in France, but I've spent some months there a few times in my life. I have an easier time communicating with people here than in France.
I can believe that.
Yeah.
I can believe
And
that.
if I was thinking like, the difficulties that people have like moving abroad, and always language and communication is one of the big fears that everybody,
Absolutely.
everybody always have. I've talked to people for years, and that's always like one of the first questions. Well, how do you communicate? And I'd say like out of all the nations I've been to, honestly, it's easier out here and in much of Southeast Asia in general, but especially in Vietnam, than a number of countries I've been to in the world. And part of that is that everybody, for the most part, is really open to communication and attempting communication and trying to work with you. And I don't want to like make generalizations towards any other nations, but I've been to a number of places where it doesn't feel like that's part of the social norm. Where people want to try to help out and make it easier for you to get by and to communicate. And here it's absolutely.
Yeah, I think about it a lot. After my sort of first year in Mexico, I went to classes. I went all in. I became fluent in Spanish. In some ways, maybe it's literally easier to learn Spanish than it is to learn Vietnamese. But I do think a lot about if part of it too is just that you're so clearly a gringo and an outsider in Mexico. Like you're a very set class of outsider if you don't bother to learn Spanish.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, and I'm not blaming Mexicans for treating like they should. That's part of their culture, right?
Yeah.
But in Vietnam, it does sometimes feel like, this culture is more or less 99% Vietnamese, right? It's a monoculture here. It's a one language culture for the most part. I know there's ethnic minorities, but the bureaucratic, the state, largely speaking, compared to most places, almost no expectation of foreigners to learn the language, right? It's like the language is so embedded in their culture that it's just like, you're not Viet. Why would you speak Viet? And when you speak even a little bit of Viet, right? Like my basic, like I sit at the cafe by my house, I order a coffee. I know how to say the numbers or read the numbers, how to say hello. I feel like people are really appreciative about that in a way where it's like, you know what I mean? Like it's a hard thing to explain.
I mean, there's been like a long history in this country, over the last 150 years of like Western and European influences. And in some forceful ways, more so than a lot of nations, that don't have that, or that do have that same language barrier. I think that it's become pretty ingrained, with like France and then, everything Indochina war area. Like it's been pretty ingrained to have Westerners out here and to have people that are foreign speaking and not really trying to get into the language. And better or for worse, like there's been generations of people growing up with that normality.
That's an interesting take. Yeah, it's true.
So whether or not it's intended as just like an openness thing, or if that's just like the happenstance, like outcome of that, either way, yeah, there's not a huge expectation for people to try to learn the language. There's been already a long time of people coming out here and having some kind of economic influence in this country without them. And in fact, the language has influenced Vietnamese language so much, hence the Roman alphabet. A couple hundred years ago, there was no Roman alphabet here. It's because of the French influence. So they've been integrative with the whole language thing for a long time and open, obviously, to it to some level of that co-assimilation without expectation that people are going to just convert everything to the Vietnamese way or the Vietnamese language just to get by.
It's interesting. It's another one that, communist state for a long time, but freedom of religion, plurality of religion, right? Unlike some other states that were, you know, a part of the whatever Soviet sphere of the world, all of the churches were still here, right? The entire time, Catholicism, Buddhism, the Cao Dai, all of those religions were openly practiced. They were never suppressed. It is a very different vibe than some other places. So what's some advice you would give, you know, something maybe they haven't thought of for that person sort of on the fence? I want to do what you did. You know, I want to come to Vietnam and open a beach bar. I want to get the fuck out of my office job and have a cafe or something on a street corner.
I don't know, man. I hate to be like Nike about it, but just
do
fucking do
it.
it.
It's not more complicated than that. The first step is always the hardest to take, you know. Once here, it's, yeah, you just go for it.
You know,
Yeah.
it can be scary, like any big change. It doesn't have to be like moving abroad. Like any big change in life can be really, really scary. And as most of us forcibly, one way or another, have learned in life, it's really not that hard. It's not that big of a deal. Like you carry on and you figure things out. Everywhere has its ups, its downs, its difficulties, its unexpected conveniences. You know, especially for foreigners who have been thinking about moving abroad, who have never done so, I think there's a big, not misunderstanding or misconception, just maybe a bit of a naivete towards how large the international community is and how many people are already doing it and have been already doing it. And almost anywhere you move in the world, and Vietnam is absolutely no exception to this. It's a shining example. Like there's a community of people that you're already familiar with who are doing the same thing, who have done the same thing, will help you out. I mean, it's one of those things you really don't understand if you're not traveling around or living abroad, like how many other people are really doing it and how normalized in a sense it already is. So it's not like you don't have to break new ground. You know, you're not like breaking the mold on something that nobody's ever done, that you have to like, you know, you're not navigating into a dark, stormy sea. It's like well navigated.
Yeah, for 100%.
The entire way there's signposts telling you which direction to go and how to do it, and there's other cool people, you know, in the same situation. And so that's the biggest thing, is just do it, because it's really not as scary as it initially seems.
I completely agree with him. I don't have much more to say. I think if you come here with an idea, as a French person, I have my own example as a French person, and working in F&B, it's bringing a little part of your culture is something that gives us an edge. We come here and we bring part of culture, part of our way of life. We come here to propose something different. That was a bit my idea when I arrived here, and I'm like, I worked a bit everywhere. I worked in France, in England. I got a big experience, and coming here, I see things I could do. I have vision. I think it's just about that. You need to come with your dream, your idea.
I have a good friend actually who probably seen in years, who just came out here. She's from Florida, originally North Carolina, and she's never left the country. She's never left the U.S. And she's like in our all relative age range as well, and it's her first time, and it was like a big scary thing for her. Obviously, she went through all these exact same things that you're talking about, like, you know, she's a foreigner who's never gone abroad, has thought about it for years, and finally, because she had some friends out here, she decided to take that step. Been here only 3 weeks. She's already got herself an apartment. She has a plan for the next 6 months and year, and she's loving it. Like overnight, the world opened up and realized, oh shit, it's not that tough. You know, years and years of like being afraid of like how big of a move it is. Meanwhile, like, you know, in North America, we can move across the country and move to another state all day long and not feel that weird about it. The cultural difference between somewhere in the South and California and New York is huge. And sometimes even the communication difference is huge. And so it's not that big of a jump to do it in a foreign sense either. And when people do, it tends to be very quickly that they realize it's not that much different in the ways that I was afraid. It's only different in the ways that are exciting and new and interesting. But in terms of the difficulties, like, you've already probably navigated most of the difficulties you're going to have to navigate here.
Because everyone wants to know at the end of the day, how much did it cost? How much does it cost to open a bar in Vietnam, to start your dream?
It can get really high, of course. It depends on the concept you
Absolutely.
have, but you can start a small restaurant with 40, 50,000 US, and it doesn't take. You could even do it for cheaper than that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's say the bare minimum 35,000, and you can do something. Now you need to be careful, go things one step at a time. Asia is very typical in the sense that a meal can cost $1 or $200, $300. There's a very wide
Full
range of
spectrum, yeah.
prices. Yeah. If you're looking for something simple, you can do it with not much.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's like the interesting thing right there is that full spread of dynamicism there. Like, it's really whatever you want to do. If you want to come in here and try to start something really cheap, like there's people doing that and it's accessible to do so. If you want to come in here and try to start like a really expensive, fancy restaurant bar, that's available. You can do that, you know? Like you said, you can spend $1 on food or $200 on food. You can spend $10 a night or you can spend $5,000 a night. There is something fully within that range or everything in between. So as an entrepreneur, it's the same thing. You know, it depends on what you're trying to do, but there's a wide accessibility.
I'm thirsty. What's it cost to get a cocktail here?
Between 110 and 140.
$4 to $6, about right? About $4 to $6 US. So for a beautiful cocktail by the beach.
Quite reasonable. Like overall, if you take all venues and stuff, yeah, it's gonna be between this range. It can go up to 220, 240 for a cocktail.
I like to wrap up with one last question, which is I asked the people I'm interviewing on the cost of living abroad, what's the thing I didn't ask you? What's the question that you're waiting for me to ask or that I should have asked or I could ask my next guest? Because obviously we all make mistakes, whether we're moving abroad, whatever, opening a business. What can I ask next time? What should have asked you?
Or maybe as a French person, we always grumpy and always negative. So yeah, that's what we could have explored as well. The negative aspect of living here, what make it difficult, and sometimes a little bit, how do you say,
Frustrating.
frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I have whole lists of the most frustrating shit about living in Vietnam.
This interview has been very positive. We don't
Yeah.
good thing about
Wow, I love it. Let's go dark at the end. So what
frustrating thing?
what is the most frustrating aspect of opening this business for you, Cyril, so far?
dealing with banks. They can sometimes be a little narrow-minded and not aware of the law. You arrive I've got this funny story, my previous business. So every time on payday, I had to go to the bank with my work permit, my contract, my pay slip, so they could organize the transfer. I used to go to always the same bank, and one day I decided to go to a different bank. And when I arrived there, the girl looked at me and said, "No, sorry, I can't do that." I said, "Right." She said, "You're a foreigner." And I looked at her and I said, "But hold on a minute. This is my company. This is my contract. I work for them. I got the work permit. I got all the papers there." She said, "No, I'm sorry. I cannot do that."
And this is, keep in mind, you're talking about just going to a different branch of the same bank, of your bank, right?
And like right down the street. It's not like it's in a different town or part of the nation. It's
But
like
you really got to keep a relaxed attitude with this. You'll get this, how do you call that? The head bumper? Yes. You really need to stay chill and not get angry about things. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's okay.
expect the unexpected for sure. It'll be like, it's weird the things like coming from California, I expect, the business license itself to be one of the most difficult things, long, painstaking, expensive, bureaucratic processes. And this is a nation known for its difficult bureaucracy. So I came here expecting that to just be the biggest process. It was simple, as straightforward as easy. We had somebody take care of it for us real quick. Meanwhile, finding these light bulbs, the Edison bulbs, that are dimmable in Da Nang, it took us longer than the business license to find a dimmable bulb.
Oh,
because we're so used to being in places where there's just accessible, for better or worse, box stores that sell all these different things. And even in Saigon, it's pretty easy. But there's just the little things you're not expecting, like this one little product you want to find. That one little thing that seems like should come really easy, and that's the thing that's going to be really difficult out here. But meanwhile, there's a bunch of other silver platters just being handed to you that are normally a very difficult and inconvenient thing in other places.
Yeah.
So open mind.
Thank you guys so much for coming on The Cost of Living Abroad. If you're heading abroad anytime soon or making the leap to Southeast Asia, use the link below pinned in the comments or at the top of the description, or just click and capture this QR code over my shoulder. Thanks so much for watching this week's episode of the Cost of Living Abroad pod, brought to you by SafetyWing Nomad Insurance. You can find more episodes of the pod over my shoulder, or check out thecostoflivingabroad.com right here.